Since the beginning of the 20th century, Westerners have been traveling to the East in search of spiritual wisdom. By the 1950s, Eastern meditation masters were coming to the West and establishing meditation centers here. This is the story of those journeys, East and West, towards refuge.
Violence is now out of date. So, the non-violence...
Even though we have all the comforts Western society has to offer, there still seems to be something missing. There's an increasing spiritual hunger. Many are seeking spiritual refuge in Eastern thought. Westerners are now taking refuge in the path of Buddhism. Since the fall of Tibet, those who've achieved some spiritual level in the East are seeking economic and political refuge in the West.
It's so difficult in the nature of man to deal with violence that, just even look at the world situation the way it is right now today, and what's going to be happening in the next few days, who knows. It seems to be almost hopeless with the nature of man as to how to deal with violence or to suppress it and let compassion and tolerance and kindness take over. We've been involved too much with the trappings of religion, I think, rather than the actual word. And I think to a certain extent, Buddhism might give us an insight and almost a rebirth of the very essentials of what, for example, Christianity preaches.
I already met some Westerners who already study or showing interest toward Buddhism. But then after 59, the interest towards Tibetan Buddhism seems, I think, quite strong. I think image of Tibet or Tibetan Buddhism. And blood drinking or that kind of thing. And also those deities with sort of sex or like that. So I think nowadays, certainly I think those more serious people, now they really getting, I think, the profound sort of understanding about what's Tibetan Buddhism.
After the invasion of Tibet in 1959, the Dalai Lama went into exile in Dharamsala, India. In 1959, Suzuki Roshi came to San Francisco and set up the Zen Center in the Bay Area. The influential Chogyam Trungpa arrived in England in 1964. And in 1973, set up centers in Vermont and Colorado. Since then, interest in Buddhism has exploded. Many Hollywood celebrities now call themselves Buddhists.
It's the hardest thing in the world to do, to be mindful, to be present, to be living your life right in the present. I can't do it. It's there's always the chatter about the past or always the chatter about the future.
I think balance, moderation, balance, those words come to mind. You know, you're functioning in the world, you're doing, at the same time you're withdrawn and watching.
Is there a spiritual side, number one? Does a spirit exist? You see. And if it does, then how does one express it? And how does one feed the spirit? You know, if it does exist.
Not to have fun is never a Buddhist motivation. To have fun is actually the purpose of practicing the Dhamma. I mean, the enlightenment is the highest form of fun.
I think there is a deepening understanding that a true spiritual path isn't necessarily going to solve your problems. Maybe it's going to bring up problems which one has up to now managed to outrun and not have to face.
They say the teacher is like the finger that points at the moon. So you don't concentrate on the finger, you concentrate on the moon. And what is the moon? The moon is your own mind. And the point of Zazen and practice is to know ourselves, to know our own mind.
You have your own backgrounds, you have your own upbringing. So in that sense, I think we're coming to another new dimension of the teachings of the Buddha. And Buddha said, at times, the teachings must be flexible so that you can incorporate it. So I think it's coming.
Taking refuge with a meditation master is the initial step on the Buddhist path. Many meditation masters at present are Tibetan and bring with them strong elements of Tibetan culture. An increasing number of Westerners have been ordained as Tibetan Buddhist monks and nuns.
Been working here for several years, actually in Wall Street originally. I was sponsored by a brokerage company here, and but it was very competitive. It was a very large company, and so 2 or 3 years into that, I decided that I would go back to England. And it was on a trip back to England that I found a note from a stepbrother. And he turned to me and said, "Lorraine, I think in this day and age, the only ones who have anything real to say are the Tibetan Lamas." And he handed me a phone number. It turned out that it was a Tibetan Lama who was living in suburbia London, and I went to visit him some weeks later for an interview, and it was very fast after that. When I left the home, I saw a photograph on the wall, and I asked him who it was. I was struck by the image. It was His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche, and I went to meet him 2 weeks later in France. And about 8 years ago, it really seemed to me inevitable that I would make a decision, although I was still working, and although I had actually a boutique, and I was meeting the public every day and involved in fashion, so I was really, you know, in the cosmetic part of life, or the aesthetics of the fashion, and but I decided to become a nun.
Buddha made it very clear. The teacher, in order to give teaching to others, first himself or herself must get deep experience. If the person really qualified one, then desire of money, desire of sex should not be there. This spirituality, this is not history, history sort of subject, or some others, I think mathematics. But this is something spiritual. Therefore, the subject which they are explaining to others must have experience. Without experience, just a mere explanation is empty word. Therefore, the proper teacher must have the deeper experience as well as knowledge. So I think one indication of deeper experience is less negative emotion, more compassionate. So then some people seeking money, seeking pleasure, they may take that opportunity, exploitation. So be very careful, including myself. I often is telling people when I give some teaching, please examine me, please spy on me. That's important.
Are you spying on yourself?
Oh yes, mindfulness. Here, mindfulness. Check 24 hours, including my dream. Check what behavior, what thinking. This Buddhist monk.
Buddhism emphasizes that one should examine carefully rather than follow on blind faith. David Chadwick was ordained as a Zen priest by Suzuki Roshi.
When Suzuki Roshi lectured about precepts, when he got to the precept about don't sell drugs or no, don't sell intoxicants, he sometimes would say this means don't sell Buddhism, because he seemed to be more concerned about his students' intoxication with the ideas around Buddhism and practice and enlightenment and all that than he was about their being carried away by drugs. Because of the writings of D.T. Suzuki and Alan Watts and the Beat poets, there was a lot of interest in Buddhism because it had gone beyond, they'd run into a dead end with existentialism and with the sort of nihilism that had developed, right? And a door opened where there was something they could do. So many of us were reacting against regimentation and all the rules and control of society. We'd become hippies. We were into do your own thing. We came to Zen Center and we find ourselves following schedules, sitting for 40 minutes with our legs crossed even if they hurt. So yeah, there's all sorts of little almost military aspects to at least studying Zen with a community or in a monastery or at the temple. But, well, it's like being a ballet dancer. You want to be a ballet dancer, you've got to be disciplined. I mean, at least you've got to go through a period of discipline.
We are told that when you take refuge, the underlying the basic cause of taking refuge has to be a fear, like you're afraid of getting wet, therefore you take refuge under umbrella.
See, we're always taking refuge in something, right? In our hope, in our projected desire, in our revenge, in drugs, in food and sex and whatever. And I don't think there's any need to give up anything in particular, but to take refuge in big mind is it's quite a leap. It's not easy to do, and that's why we need each other. We have to work on this together, even though institutions and people, we always irritate each other.
In these troubled times of heightened violence and war, Westerners are seeking a place to go in their mind that offers more spiritual comfort and a compassionate approach. The emphasis on self of the me generation may now be giving way to a more interdependent attitude. Sakyong Mimpom Rinpoche is the leader of Shambhala International and the son of Trungpa Rinpoche.
We're taking refuge in our own ability. What is our most innate ability is that we are all Buddhas and that we are all enlightened beings. That's what Buddha literally means, is a sense of total enlightenment. And enlightenment here means compassion, wisdom, understanding, skillful means, knowing how to conduct oneself. So the process of taking refuge is taking refuge in our awakened quality, in our basic goodness, in our undeniable quality that we are fundamentally good and pure people. And that a lot of times we don't recognize that. A lot of times we don't have confidence in that. So we need a ceremony. We need a ceremony to say, I am a Buddha. There's an old story when the Buddha was traveling and doing many different kinds of spiritual practices, and he became very emaciated because he stopped taking food, and he became very, very thin and basically fainted and passed out. And then he was brought, some say some rice or yogurt. He took the food, was able to nourish himself, and then after that it's said that he, meditated and achieved enlightenment. Long-term happiness comes from having a good relationship with your own mind and your own heart. So we do have to start with our own selves in a sense of learning how to meditate ourselves, learning how to generate some kind of kindness from ourselves. Then we have the ability to do it, for others.
I think Buddhist concept, not just the single-pointed meditation, that sometimes may bring stability, but not necessarily sharpening your mind. Mind, of course, firstly, quick reaction. Then second, the quality of sharp mind is penetrate. Not only superficial, but more penetrate, deep down. And also the awareness, the consequences. So rapidly. Yes, if this is so. But there are also repercussion. This may happen, that may happen. These are the, I think, quality of sharpness of mind.
Today, people seem willing to explore areas that were previously dismissed as fantasy. Now there is room to consider the less tangible aspects of our lives. Are we in search of a new set of beliefs? Are spiritual values changing? Are the secrets of spiritual realization as obtainable as the secrets of material success?
Moderation and balance, at least for me, is working, but I need to feed these different compartments until I can balance them. When I never had great balance. I have to figure this out still. It's always been a problem in my life. It's a necessity, spiritual life. It's not a choice. It's like if I don't have it, I'm going to be depleted. It's like chemicals in your body. Maybe it is a genetic thing, how religious you are or how spiritual you are. I know some old women in Asia who pray 10 hours a day, every day. I know people who are on sabbaticals or retreats for 2 years, 3 years in monasteries. It's a very different way of life they're choosing. They're very radical.
Most religion is materialism. Most of what we call religion is trying to find some place in space and time where we're safe. But there is no place in space and time where we're safe.
Philip Glass is a composer and a Buddhist.
There's no doubt that Tibetan Buddhism has had a tremendous impact on the West already. Buddhism generally has been coming to the West probably for the last 100 years. For the first time, a culture which had been really hermetically sealed up in a way had suddenly become opened up. And though what has been a tragedy for the Tibetan people has not been a tragedy for us, has been that for the first time we have access to teachers and traditions and living masters who are in the West, in Europe, in America. And for us who are alive now, we're the only people that will have met people from old Tibet, the isolated Tibet. Nothing more definite than your own death, and that addresses the whole question of your impermanence. So these are ideas which in the West we almost always are in the process of denying. We deny the reality of our own death, and we deny the fact that our own impermanence. So Tibetan Buddhism is is seeing the way things really are and the way our life really is, instead of creating a life of fantasy, fiction, and denial about things that we'll never be able to deny ultimately.
Now I'm attracted to it because I'm interested in ritual. Buddhist subject matter has always been fascinating to me because of the nature of the behavior of many of the Buddhists that I've seen, how they behave personally and also behavior and the ritual of the religion itself. Not that I can understand everything that the ritual signifies.
Many artists, filmmakers, and creative people are fascinated by what they've seen of Buddhism as it moves towards the West. Some of them have taken refuge as Buddhists. Others have produced major motion pictures about the life of the Dalai Lama and the concept of reincarnation and the fall of Tibet. If we go back and think about how Buddhism started from the very beginning, it was started by Prince Siddhartha. The name Siddhartha literally means every wish fulfilled. Siddhartha's every princely wish was fulfilled. All his time was filled with sensual activities and distractions. He was constantly protected from any unpleasant realities. At a certain point, he decided he didn't want to live in fantasy and illusion anymore. As the story goes, he wanted to see the world of reality. One day he left his palace and went out into the world. And he saw sickness, old age, and death for the first time. He was so moved by seeing the suffering that he decided it was necessary for him to completely awaken his mind and become enlightened. The word Buddha means awakened. Buddhists believe that all people have Buddha mind and can be enlightened. We could say that in the United States, at this moment in time, metaphorically, we are in Siddhartha's palace. We are at that point where we are continually having our egos supported. We have enormous opportunities for escapism and fantasy. This state of mind is often described as the God world.
We have to go beyond happiness and unhappiness. Buddhism is supposedly path to enlightenment, not for well-being. If you have strong ego, attachment to the ego, Buddhism can be quite hard and harsh and bad news if you love yourself so much.
When one takes refuge, they are saying, I am now on the path. From now on, my solution to everything is trying to have recognition of the nature of my own mind. By taking refuge, one is abandoning the concept of doubt. They are giving up the idea of nihilism. They are saying, there is a possibility, a way to battle through all of this and become a warrior in my own epic of development.
In Buddhism, when we say, I take refuge to the Buddha, the word refuge actually means I accept that myself, my nature, is the Buddha. And I accept that this being like a Siddhartha, I accept that he managed to discover that Buddha nature and use him as a model or an example, and then take the similar path that he took.
The West is taking refuge in Buddhism, and Buddhism appears to be taking refuge in the West. Perhaps the West's fascination with Buddhism, based in the development of mind, may be attributed to the fact that many in the West have gone through some form of psychological exploration, such as psychotherapy and other self-examining remedies. Zangzar Khyentse Rinpoche is an abbot of a monastery and director of the film The Cup.
Well, I see a lot of influence, not only in the West, just generally in the world, coming from television, film, magazines. So image, therefore, is definitely probably the strongest influence that we have. And then, of course, the sound. And we have in the film both. And it's one of the reasons why I chose to become a filmmaker. Why not become the influence instead of being influenced? I think in the film, The Cup, I have mentioned about why change is necessary. If not for Buddhism, Tibetans are very hot-blooded, and they could be really extreme, fanatical, and very narrow-minded. Even after arrival of Buddhism, I still find they are quite narrow-minded.
Traditional religions are now in a more cooperative mood than they have been for centuries. But there is considerable doubt amongst their followers that their gods are in close contact with the present human condition. Many mainstream religions are now encouraging various forms of meditation.
But because Zen and Buddhism are new in America, there's an idea that they're more pure, that they are more effective, that they're more real and sincere than other religions. Now in Japan, they tend to think of Christianity as more sincere and pure and real, and I think of Buddhists as sort of an old dead religion. It's just priests are only interested in money and drinking and stuff like that. But, you know, Buddhists are not necessarily any more enlightened than Christians or atheists or anybody. But I think Jesus taught that it's thought itself that is God.
Change tradition sometimes may harmful. So therefore, now in the field of religious faith, I feel Westerner, like United States or Europeans, generally the Christians, and then Jews, Judaism, and then some extent Muslim. So therefore, the people from this area, better to keep your own tradition. Not follow to other tradition. Because sometimes it may create more confusion.
Bernardo Bertolucci is the director of the film Little Buddha. The film explores the issues of reincarnation and how candidates are chosen as tokus, or incarnate lamas.
One day I read about a boy, a Spanish boy, who has been recognized a tulku. It's called Lama Ozel. So I called my friend Paolo, and we start to talk about that. And I'm very interested on the fact that a Western boy can be the reincarnation of maybe a great Lama, Tibetan Lama. Of course it is possible. But before everything, it was necessary, it was needed for me a kind, not only the authorization, but the blessing of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And he said, how do you call it? I said, if I can, I'd like to call it Little Buddha. And he starts to laugh and says, oh, we all have a little Buddha inside us. And he said, yes, it happened and it can happen. And it was, he was incredible because he told me, you know, we have to be careful sometimes because sometimes this, finding this reincarnation is a rip-off. I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, maybe there is a monastery, very poor, which finds out that somebody quite rich in the valley is expecting a baby, so they get excited, say this baby will be a tulku, so we can get some money. And so he said there has been a lot of speculation about tulkus, and so like he warned me very honestly about the fact that not every tulku which is found is a real thing.
Power, money, sex, control, I mean, it's the same old story wherever you look. It's in Buddhism, it's in Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, you name it. It's in business, it's in anywhere you look. It's human nature. One of the problems in Tibetan Buddhism, because of you know, this tantric aspect, I mean, certain lamas use that and to seduce women into thinking that there's something special and that they're going to be tantric consorts.
Annie Tenzin Palmo has spent 12 years meditating in a cave in India. She has also founded the first nunnery outside Tibet.
Well, I mean, you see it, of course, in Buddhist magazines. Everybody says His Holiness or His Eminence nowadays, you know, and nobody just wants to be an ordinary Khenpo. They have to be a Khenchen, you know, a great Khenpo. And, of course, some lamas present themselves like they are the film stars. Right? In a traditional society, someone who was really going to become a practitioner, you know, you give it a lot of time. It takes, you're slow cooking, you're not on a microwave. And nowadays people expect, you know, to get instant realizations in a weekend tantra course. We undervalue ourselves continually by identifying with all the wrong things, by identifying with our gender and with our body and with our conceptual mind, with our memories and with our belief systems. This tremendous emphasis on being happy and being fulfilled, and that our fulfillment and happiness depends on things exterior to ourselves. So in the West, people have too many possessions. They've had endless relationships, and on the whole, most of it has not brought them much happiness. It's created more chaos, more confusion, which is why people feel this sense of unrest, this sense of depression, this sense of anxiety. So then they begin to think maybe the answer doesn't lie outside, maybe the answer lies within us.
Tibetan lamas have seen the openness of the West towards them and their thirst for spiritual developments. The lamas have found a welcome refuge in this society. Two Tibetan abbots, called the Khenpos, have built a traditional Tibetan monastery in Delaware County, New York.
Definitely, we think, the Buddhism is finding good refuge in Western countries because the Western, as we said before, the Western, all the practitioners are quite educated and intellectual, and also they're looking something deeper meaning of their life and the meanings of the existing, and I think Buddhist is offering those answers or giving those answers, and therefore we think is finding good refuge in the West. Until that, according to Buddhism, until you take the refuge, you're completely, maybe you're already refuge, you're relying to someone all the time and looking the solution all the time outside. But when you take the refuge, you become self-equipped and independent, and you freedom. You have every opportunity, every equipment to be yourself. Therefore, when you take refuge in the Buddhism, take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, you are in the freedom and you are independent. And then that's it. You can celebrate Independence Day that time. This country has the great right and great freedoms, so we definitely take the refuge to the freedom of the Americans, all the rights and independence. We like also all the modern technologies too, so in a way, those are great. Even though we don't know too much about those things, but we enjoy the television, we enjoy the telephone, we enjoy the computer, email, and all those things, the modern common and a fax machine. So we enjoy, definitely. But more than that, we really enjoy and appreciate, and we take refuge in the freedom that what the American offers, or this great country, or the Indian offer to us.
America is a country that has been involved with freedoms of all sorts. Religion in this country is seen as a freedom, not as an oppression as it is seen in Europe. At this time, many people are getting involved with Buddhism. They are just beginning to learn the language.
In Buddhism, the path is not a path that's laid out, that you say, oh, this is the path, I'm going to follow it. It's the hunter's path. It's always changing. There is no path. You look for the signs of the animal. You look for the scat of the animal.
We are uncomfortable with the concept of blind faith. Our Western education has taught us to think everything through and come to a logical conclusion. This logic leads us to seek a path that is less dogmatic and more open to individual needs. We need a way that has more freedom and choice, which is in line with the visions we have of ourselves as Westerners. His Holiness Shempen Dawa Rinpoche, son of His Holiness Dujim Rinpoche, has many centers in the East and West.
You've got to dissolve the notion of the path itself. And the Buddha, who is Buddha? And what is Buddha? It's none other than our own enlightened awareness. We are all enlightened beings, except we're confused by our emotions. You see, there may be some people interested in the intrinsic kind of way of the mandalas are drawn, the way ritual things are performed. There are certain people that are fascinated by that. You know, they see that as something glittering, something very attractive. But when they look really into it, and when they really get into it, and then they begin to say, oh, these are not important. These are things that has to be abandoned. Follow the path, which eventually becomes pathless. The time now where so many people are interested is a result of what has been laid by great teachers. It's their prayers and aspirations are being fulfilled now. So in the sense of it, I think we are now, my generation of teachers now, or lamas or whatever, we are learning how to communicate that to you all. So I think we are coming to another third level where Dharma will be according to your way of living, your way of thinking. Like Dharma becomes a everyday household word. I think that's going to come soon.
Buddhism expresses the view that everything that exists is by nature mind. It is the mind in which all spiritual ideas are invented. When one takes refuge, they wish to enter the awakened state and to have full recognition of the nature of their mind. They take the path towards enlightenment.
That's another thing about Buddhism that I found over the last few years, 10 years, it's been, you can't hide anything. You're bound to tell the truth. Because whatever you hide is seen anyway, in some way. I don't know how, but it is.
Oliver Stone, Oscar-winning film director and Buddhist.
I don't like the word took refuge. I know it's a holy word, I just don't like it. I don't think of it that way. Entered into, studied, a student of, shared a bit of the experience. I never felt I wanted to become a member of a cult. And it does risk that at times in the West. I don't like the Western practices because they're cult-like. And also, frankly, slavishly devoted. I find that Westerners spend more time, almost an exaggerated amount of time, doing their self-torture or self-revelation or self-consciousness, whatever it is, but they change their lives too abruptly. And it doesn't seem right. It seems that life is more of a long-term river, and you have to navigate the streams a little bit slower. I responded to the Buddha's story because of his intelligence, because of his width of understanding. And then, of course, he has to find another road. He leaves his home. That's the beautiful story. It's a great story. And of all the Savior stories, I believe, I like that one the best. I don't like the concept of coming down and getting nailed to a cross. I find it very brutal. And, I don't know that it's necessary but maybe there's an old feeling that blood is what does it. The West has had more respect for the blood myth than the East, probably. If you read Buddhism the way I read it, the beauty of it was a very intelligent philosophy. It wasn't a cult. It wasn't a religion.
War is outdated.
The Dalai Lama, Tibet's spiritual leader, is also Tibet's political leader. He has won the Nobel Peace Prize and has gained the popularity of a media star.
Then I think one important, the very purpose of Buddha Dharma, I think, like any other tradition, change of our emotion. That is the main purpose. So change of emotion, not through injection, not through prayer, but through meditation, but through analyze the reality. Through analyze, eventually, emotion or concept or way of thinking will change. When we say egoless, that does not mean we reduce the sense of self. The feeling of strong I, sense of strong self, itself, I think, good. But then, that combined with negative emotions, such as hatred, or then it becomes really destructive. Too much self-confidence, then doing all sorts of negative and no feeling at all about other sort of experiences or others' feeling. The Bodhisattva sort of practice, willing to sacrifice oneself for benefit of other, and also is willing to take all suffering of other sentient being on oneself, and willing to give all one's own sort of virtuous things, good things to other. In order to practice that, unless you have very strong sort of determination or willpower and self-confidence, you can't practice that. So in order to practice that, the very strong as a sense of self, very strong self, very necessary.
The Buddhist lamas coming to the West are seeking spiritual refuge in a better economic and political environment for their spiritual practice and life. It is the Westerners' fervor and enthusiasm which encourage so many lamas to offer their wisdom to the West.
Tibetan sort of tradition is only important for the Tibetans. What had happened in Tibet was something sad and all that. But it has brought a lot of good consequences too. If not for what had happened to Tibet, none of these great people, such as Chogyam Trungpa, would have ever come to the West. Tibetans are taking refuge politically, economically, to the rest of the world. And rest of the world, some are taking refuge to this living tradition of wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. And that's a very good exchange, I think.
Out of material facility.
Melissa Matheson wrote the script for the film Kunda about the life of the Dalai Lama.
What is Buddhism about? And I've just gone from the big, elaborate, mysterious, fantastic picture of, Tibet on top of the mountain to what the people sitting in the room quietly are about. But you do see that this is about what's inside you, that it's about your inner sense of responsibility and kindness. And do you need to live in the highest place in the world on top of a mountain to practice it, to be it? No. You could be living in a jail with guys, throwing feces at you and have it. So Tibet will survive without Tibet. There is something very particularly attractive about the Tibetans to Westerners. And there is a dignity in these people that is, I think people hope it's a little contagious. And there's a joy because they are a joyful people, and there's laughing, and there's lack of self-consciousness, and there is an intrinsic happiness. And I think you see it. Everybody's a Buddha, everybody is been your mother, and so everybody's interrelated, and they have a belief in the interrelatedness, the interdependency of their experiences with one another. They don't quite get the way we live. They're kind of astounded at our bubbles, that we all live in these bubbles of anxiety, which they find terribly amusing and just don't understand why we don't see that it's all an illusion, so to speak, and we're very tense and dealing with our little moment-to-moment stuff. Coming back to Hollywood, even if it's the new trend, I see people kind of trying to trim down the excesses of their lives. And the more you trim down, when you keep trimming, you're just finally left with yourself.
Tibet by nature was a hierarchical culture, and the West is a free and democratic culture. Now Westerners are realizing there is considerable difference between Buddhism and Tibetan culture. Lamas are also realizing that freedom here is an absolute right and an individual responsibility. If Buddhism is to succeed in the West, there can be little doubt that it will have to reflect attitudes of Western culture.
You could take aspects of the religion to supplement your own, or even aspects of the religion to supplement your own ethics, your own way of thinking about society.
Martin Scorsese directed Kundun, a film about the life of the Dalai Lama.
I'm not Buddhist, so I don't really understand the finer tenets of Buddhism and that sort of thing. But the one thing that I aligned myself with were the people, and the idea of the religion, the idea of compassion and kindness and tolerance, and ultimately pacifism. And I thought that for me is something that has to be explored. Working with them created an atmosphere very much unlike any movie I've ever made. It was extremely difficult to shoot, but on the other hand, it was one of the greatest, vacation is the wrong word, but one of the greatest motion picture experiences I've ever had. It was like a retreat. The normal frustrations of making a film, particularly on location, there were times I was, quite frustrated and upset and that sort of thing. But at the same time, as I say, it still was one of the greatest, it was probably the best experience of shooting a movie I've ever had. In a practical way, it was how to balance feelings of frustration, anxiety, anger, how to balance it in your mind and your heart so that it doesn't do you in. There's certain things that are just not going to change. They're not going to change. You better go with it. Deal with what the issue is, Try to work it out, Other things that can be changed, try to do it constructively. That's all. And put things in literally put things in a degree of importance. Because so many things go wrong each day, But then take that experience from that set and apply it to the everyday in real life. And it has helped somewhat. It really has. It doesn't mean I don't have the difficulty of doing films, I don't have the difficulty in daily life, but it's, as I say, on a practical level, it's helped somewhat. Who said that Tibetan Buddhism was going to continue to exist the way it has the past 1,400 years? Now it's out, and it changes, it transforms, and in an interesting way, I think it's something that could really help the thinking and the beliefs of the West. And very often, one of the things that could happen in Western religion is that one becomes more preoccupied. Not everyone. Some do become more preoccupied with the more concrete aspects of that religion. We become involved more with the surface of it rather than the real deep meaning, and trying to live that deep meaning out every day. And so there's something that we've lost, I think, the sense of compassion, kindness, and the sense of tolerance. There's something about the way they move. There's something about the looks on their faces. And I think, as I've said many times, just know how they revere the world and know how they revere each other, and especially the Dalai Lama.
The whole Buddhist path is about how to get beyond neurosis. It's not just telling you, don't be angry. It's showing you how you can work with your anger. And most people, they want the idea of bliss and peace and all that side of it, but they don't want the hard work which it takes. They're not thinking of the person right in front of them, their partners, their children, their parents, their colleagues at work, their employers or employees, the people they meet every day. This is the opportunity to practice. So seeing that most practitioners, the vast majority, have families, relationships, careers, a social life, and so forth, then the Dharma has to adapt itself to the kinds of lives of the practitioners and become relevant for their daily life. When the Buddha was walking this earth, he was, he didn't spend all his time sitting under a tree. He was, for 45 years, wandering around northern India, meeting with kings and courtesans, businessmen, warriors, and many, many different kinds of people. He didn't tell them all that they had to leave their homes and their families. If it was a king, he taught him how to be a good king. If it was a businessman, then he showed him how to use the family life as a way of practicing the Dharma.
The simple image of the yogi in the cave hardly seems workable for those of us who have to go to work every day. Nevertheless, the Tibetans have already enriched our lives by encouraging us to improve the image we have of ourselves. And Buddhism is giving us practical ways of dealing with the nature of our mind. The Tibetans who left their Shangri-La did not wither and die. Their lives have been renewed by taking refuge in the West.
So some people may get some sort of impression and Dalai Lama have the healing power, so that in spite of the expenses sort of troubling come to here, then when he actually met me, nothing happened. Then the worst thing, some people might come here with belief that Dalai Lama have some miracle power. Just asked.
Rinpoche, is Buddhism taking hold in the West?
It seems nowadays some scientists, especially in the field of brain or human psychology, human sort of the people, scientists who are sort of working about human emotions. Now it seems in that field, Tibetan Buddhism, I think some potential to help them. And also we also can, what's the useful is to learn their result of their experiment. Western sort of scientific sort of way, and Buddhist explanation mainly based on experiences. I think through jointly, perhaps I think helpful.
In what way is it helpful?
I think Buddhist theory, the theory of interdependency. I think that theory, even the politician or businessman, I think that sort of concept, I think help to widen their perspective, perception. My friend, Westerner, who later used to told me, because of Buddhist sort of concept, you see, they survived in spite some personal tragedies sort of experiences. Some of them, some told me, unless they have that kind of new sort of concept from the Buddhist sort of way of thinking, he or she is really passing through very, very difficult sort of period. But they survived because of the Buddhist concept.
What about people in other religions?
Certainly, remain as a Christian. But at the same time, take some Buddhist sort of concept of sort of, I think I feel one sort of the concept, the Buddhist concept, mother sentient being, all sentient being, not only human being, but all other sort of sentient being is considered something sacred. Respect their life, concern their welfare. I think that's good.
Do you mean people should not change their religion?
You see, in early 60s, I have one Polish lady, one old Polish lady, who really helped a lot for Tibetan refugee, and eventually become a very sort of close friend. And then she originally a member of Theosophy. So she a lot of sort of attraction towards Buddhism. I think because through my sort of the personal sort of, I think, friendship. Then I think when she passed away, I think her age, I think 80s. So at the time of her sort of death, or just before his death, it seems in her mind some confusion. The Buddhist concept and concept of creator seems to some sort of confusion.
Has the movie Kundan about your escape from Tibet made Buddhism popular?
The real Buddhist story is you cannot act by one ordinary person. Of course, to us like that. To either Christian, ordinary human being, you see, acted, no matter how sort of expert actor, can't act the real Jesus. So similarly, in Buddhist case also it's the same. However, you see, the one good actor acted as a Buddha, and some story of his as a part of his life, certainly is it useful to, to reach Buddha's, I think, basic message of Four Noble Truths to millions of other people. So similarly, Kundan, about my story, I think some, I'm helpful in the sense to promote awareness of Tibet and awareness of me personally. When I give the public talk, when you see there's a large number of people who came, then at the beginning I always make clear, if someone is come to here with great expectation, that's wrong. I have nothing to offer to you, nothing, except some of my experiences.
Did you have to study to become the Dalai Lama?
I think I started to learn by heart some of the text. I think my age around 6, 7 years old. So still, whenever I have time, I study or remind those texts which I studied before, some new text. Still, I'm reading whenever I have time.
How do you choose a Lama?
The real quality of the Lama is knowledge of the Buddhist teaching and experience of the Buddhist teaching. So ultimately, still, the sort of Buddhist teaching is the ultimate, teacher.
Do you mean the teachings are the ultimate teacher?
So there's some stories. One Tibetan Lama, when he about to die, some of his sort of disciple now showing, sadness and cried. And he asked, why you're so sad? Then they say, now up to now we have our Guru, so whenever we find some sort of doubt or difficulties or obstacles, we can ask you, we can rely on you. Now you will not be no longer there. So now when we face some problems, how to do? To whom we rely? Then the dying sort of Lama stated, you already have enough sort of knowledge or experience, so now on you don't need any Lama. Your Lama should be the Buddha's teaching text. Your Lama. So read more, and whenever you get some doubt, read, study, think. He said, he answered like that. I think that's very true. Very, very true.
But people in the West have busy lives and no spare time.
So you need determination. You need effort. So effort not from external sort of force or external pressure, including your teacher, but something internal, volunteer desire. Like my own sort of case. When I was, say, teenage, although I already started study, including debate, but no inner sort of enthusiasm. So takes just like the burden given me by my teacher, mercilessly. So therefore, you see, there is no real enthusiasm from within. So they afterward, yes, get some taste of Buddha Dharma, some conviction. Then even today, whenever I have time, even if my breakfast, mouth, you see some work, but at the same time, my eye always look the reading. So sometimes I listen, you see, the radio. But this listen, but I always read. Think.
Here, people's lives are so filled up with responsibilities.
You will not have sort of feeling of tiredness because of internal enthusiasm. So then time factor is nothing. Time consumption is then, you see, not important. Whenever you have time, you're always willing to read, think, and meditation. So therefore, the enthusiasm, in order to develop enthusiasm, you need conviction. Yes, through this practice, I get this benefit. If I remain like today's sort of mental state, just like another person, now one example, I get sick, I'm getting older and older, so eventually I have to die. So then what use? These are the material things. Even my friend, at the time of my death, I have to live. Even this body, I have to live. So the only thing, mental quality, quality not only just mere knowledge, but some deeper imprints in our mind. That will go next life. 1,000 lifetimes, millions lifetimes. This will go. This will benefit. So through that way, we'll go to Buddhahood. If you study, through study, once you know these questions and time and answer, although you see, I think basic sort of structure, Kasuta, given by Buddha himself and all these great masters, and the further personal investigation, then you get more conviction. Conviction brings more enthusiasm. Enthusiasm brings more effort. More effort brings better result. So that's why you see they need. You see study knowledge. It's just a prayer. It's a Buddham Shanam Gacchami, Namam Buddhaya, 1,000 times. Just lip service, or almost like lip service. I don't know how much sort of impact in my mind. I don't know.
Do you actually make an effort to create these imprints?
Sort of inquiring as much as I can, some deeper imprints, positive imprints in my mind. So day and night, including in my dream, some sort of effort, some sort of desire is to accumulate some kind of deeper sort of experiences. So like that. So therefore, in order to develop conviction, you need a lot of sort of, no. I think the awareness, the reality. Reality of our body, or our life, this life, or reality of samsara, we call samsara, cyclic existence, and reality of nirvana, whether nirvana is something real or not. That question, you see, bring the further investigation about nature of mind and nature of emotion. Whether emotion can eliminate or not.
What part do the senses play?
I think some proper sort of practitioner, I think they mainly, you see, the emphasis on the deeper mind. They don't care about the senses of senses, sensorial sort of thing.
Including movies and television?
To some people, I think the sensorial sort of power, very, very effective. Well, then pictures, sounds, smell, I don't know. Smell and taste, I don't know. Otherwise, you see the image or art in the form of picture or form of color, form of sound, I think really touch their deep insight. But some people may not that. I think one example, I think in the past, I think one under Milarepa, I don't think. I think he don't care what sound, or picture. I don't think. He always used his deep sort of insight, not relying on sensorial or say experiences. I don't think. I think, roughly speaking, may not be right, but my impression, I think in the ordinary people, or in some people, I think usually they always sort of, their mind go outside. So and there is for such people, I think through music, through some sort of visuals. Now, I think certain positive as well as negative sort of message, imprint, sometimes unconsciously.
Is Buddhism okay for everyone?
There are many different causes and conditions, and different sort of different background. So accordingly, we need some kind of approach. We can't sort of treat them same way. They look on the surface, yes, some mental disturbance there. Then one method for all, wrong, I think.
Is there one true faith?
Like, I think, body, or immune system, the person's mental sort of structure, some are quite sort of strong, some are weak. So accordingly, we need different method. So variety of people. So need variety of method. Therefore, I always telling people, we need variety of religion, variety of philosophy, because of that fact. No matter how Buddhism is sophisticated, cannot satisfy variety of people. So we need variety of religion.
Why is there so much more violence and unhappiness now?
Modern technology and human sophisticated mind or smart brain, just a mere sort of smart brain, these two combine without proper warm heart or proper sort of motivation, or modern technology, human intelligence, guided by negative emotion, then immense destructions. So that, to me, that also is one, I think, clear sort of confirmation that we need more effort to increase compassion, sense of caring, a sense of, I think, the awareness, entire humanity as a member of one human family. I think that's very important.
What is the meaning of mindfulness?
Sharpening your mind, at the same time, because of basically your sort of attitude, you still remain very calm. I think that we need. Just stability, calm mind, without much sort of thinking, that also not, I think, not wonderful, not something very good. Clear? Oh, why? I think some of the birds, some of the pigeons, they're very peaceful. When they feed and fat, and no images of threat, very peaceful, very calm, very holy. So, yeah, dull. Because as a human being, this is intelligence. I think potential of visions. Think about the future. Think of many things. So that's one, I think, good quality of human mind. But at the same time, that also sometimes bring more anxiety, more fear, more doubt. As a result, more disturbances.
So sharp mind doesn't solve the problem.
Sometimes some people, their mind very sharp, but so much ups and downs. So that disturbs their mind. and eventually ruin for their physical health also.
What is sharp mind?
So one part of the quality, I think here, that sharpness, mindfulness also there, your mind focusing one particular subject. If you see your mind scattered, then you can't penetrate deeply and also can't see the other sort of consequences, possibility of consequences.
Does meditation always produce a good result?
I met some practitioner few years ago, one monk from Ladakh. He spent some time, a few years in meditation. And then he told me before retreat, his mind sharp. He learned easily. After few years of meditation, and he found his sharpness of mind much reduced. And he inquiring, what happened? Of course, I have no clear answer, but there is possibility, two possibilities. One possibility is the real sort of samadhi, the single-pointed mind. There we should not only just your mind live on one single sort of point, but you should have full alertness of mind. If you emphasize on just a single-pointed, without moving, or neglect about sharpness or about the alertness of the mind, then there is danger. It's harmful to reduce your sharpness of mind. This is one thing.
So meditation can become illusion.
Some Chinese, inquiring me, some of their master, sort of meditation there. It seems it's a single-pointed mind, experience of single-pointed mind. Seems great, seems good. But the person becomes something very cold, not much sort of sensitivity. So some Chinese inquire about that. Then again, I told two possibilities. One, again, is a similar thing, as I mentioned earlier. The second, the interpretation of emptiness. If go wrongs, then that also happen. Yes, all are just sort of illusion, just mirage, no real one. So, because of that wrong conception, then feeling reduce.
Is it different with the tantric practices?
In tantric practice, now some method, you see, to reduce or to withdraw, you see, the grosser level of inner energy with that in a grosser level of mind through some technique. You see, press these veins. So unless proper guidance, you may die. You may get a heart attack. So there is dangerous. Danger is also there.
What is emptiness?
According to some Buddhist school thought, they say the ultimate nature of that mental state, completely purified of mind, that very nature is emptiness. Therefore, in order to experience that kind of emptiness, you should meditate on emptiness.
Do you have to be a Buddhist to become enlightened?
Now, the enlightenment, according to Buddhism, is in the definition of enlightenment according to Buddhism. That kind of enlightenment achieved, I think, should be Buddhist. But then enlightenment, some other sort of as an interpretation, according to Christianity, according to Muslim, according to Hinduism. So when you say enlightenment, there are different sort of interpretation, different meaning. So according to each sort of meaning or different interpretation. You need sort of their own, method.
What should people think when they see your image in media?
I dedicated. My very existence is something benefit to other. One time in Germany, after my teaching, among some questions, I think one lady, I think a little disturbance her mind. So she expressed in her questions whether permissible she considered me something close friend to her. Then I answered, whatever way you get some immediate sort of benefit, you can think, no problem. So because, the one part of sort of, I think, practice of the Bodhisattva was, wow, oneself is nothing but something, the possession of other. Okay? So whatever way, some use even if you use my physical, as of course as a Dalai Lama, I think it will never happen. But theoretically, if one day I become a slave for some benefit to someone, yes, that's my duty to serve, to work, because I dedicated my whole sort of body, speech, mind to this end being. That's my prayer. Not something which is special to me. All the people who take Bodhisattva vow should practice that.